So you decided to try microdosing, but you're not sure what your ideal microdose actually is. Today I'm going to walk you through a step-by-step process on how to calibrate your perfect microdose so that you can get the most out of a microdosing protocol. Think of this like your Goldilocks dose. Not too much, not too little, just right and just for you. Let's get into it. Calibration helps you find your sweet spot. It's where you get those subtle benefits and those subtle noticings that don't completely alter and distract you from your daily life. So here's what you need to get started. First, you'll choose your substance. The most commonly microdose substances are psilocybin and LSD. Psilocybin has a lot more of the feminine qualities of connection and creativity, where LSD has a little bit more of the masculine properties of focus and structure. So decide based on what you're looking for throughout your protocol. Second, you'll want to block off 2 full days off your calendar. You want to make sure that you have the attention to be fully present and fully clear in the process. It's really important. Number 3, grab your journal. You'll want to pay attention to how you feel and take notes as you're learning this process and being super intentional. Let's start with day 1. This day is all about finding your threshold dose. A threshold dose is the dose right where you start to feel the effects of the psychedelics start to take place. That's where you'll stop today, so you'll pay attention to when that happens. Step 1, before you even take the medicine, is determine what your dosing routine is gonna look like. This means that when you take your dose, you're not simply taking the medicine and then going on with your day. We're gonna have to unwire some conditional habits that we've learned throughout our years in Western medicine culture of taking the dose and then passively letting it help us. This is a much more active process. So you'll want to consider things like, will you set an intention? What will your space look like? How will you take the medicine? Will it be after a meditation, after a yoga practice? Something that truly anchors you into the present moment is highly recommended. You'll also want to consider things like, will you drink coffee those days that you dose? Will you eat breakfast? What will your actual routine look like on those dosing days that you will rinse, wash, and repeat as you do your protocol? Because even subtle changes in that routine can affect how that medicine is interacting with you. It can affect your ideal dose. Step 2, set a welcome intention. And I think this part is going to be really important for you because what you're doing here is you're welcoming this medicine into your life in a completely new way. You're saying, I'm ready for you to show me things that I cannot see and things that I'm ready to change. So by setting this welcome intention and by opening yourself to the medicine and the magic of the medicine, you're again unwiring that conditional habit that this medicine is here to fix you, and actually it's here to show you. My suggestion here is set a welcome intention that's something like, I am open to finding my ideal dose today, so that you can go throughout your program and your protocol with this ideal dose, getting the most from the medicine, and begin to cultivate and create that relationship with the medicine that you're working with. Might sound really weird and bizarre at first, but trust me, this process is going to drastically improve the results that you experience throughout the protocol. Step 3, now that you have finally set your intention, decided what your ritual is going to be, you'll take your medicine and then set a 60-minute timer. If you're working with psilocybin, you're going to take what's the standard dose of a psilocybin dose, which is 100 milligrams or 0.1 grams. If you're taking LSD, this will be 10 micrograms. Once you have that medicine, take a moment with it. Maybe place it in your hands, put it next to your heart. Do something different than you would with a normal medicine. Again, we're setting ourselves up so that we have a new relationship. We're taking an active process in taking this medicine. Maybe take a few deep breaths, calm your nervous system down, remind yourself that you're safe, and then go ahead and take the medicine only when you feel ready. Set your 60-minute timer, and then we'll move on to step 4. Step 4 is noticing. And for the next 60 minutes, you are going to pay careful attention to any changes that you feel or experience. It might take around 45 to 60 minutes for the medicine to actually start to kick in, depending on your metabolism, but you want to notice what you see, what you feel, any thought changes, any mood shifts, anything that's different in your physical and emotional awareness. Pay attention and write those things down in your journal, because those are the things that you want to notice as you're getting to your threshold dose. Most people won't notice any changes at this dose. There's a reason that it's the standard microdose for people. It's typically below threshold for most individuals, but for some people who are super sensitive, you might start to notice things here that are a lot different than what you notice in your regular awareness. If that's true for you, you'll stop here and you won't move past this step. If it's not true for you, if you're not noticing too intense changes or anything really abnormal at all, you'll move on to step 5 and continue the process. Step 5 is to take your second dose. You're gonna take the same increment of what you took on the first dose again. So if it was 100 milligrams of psilocybin, you're gonna take another 100 milligrams of psilocybin, set your intention, welcome the medicine in, and then set that 60-minute timer. Step 6 is to notice again. Pay attention to the cognitive and emotional changes that you're noticing. You want to pay attention to this so closely because if you're not paying attention, you could miss it. It's very subtle. The point of finding this threshold dose is so that you actually have a microdosing dose that's not going to impact your life in a big way. And this is really nuanced for people. You might like feeling a little bit of the psychedelic or enhanced effects for 60 to 90 minutes. Like that might be really supportive for you. But everyone is so different. And if you have a life that doesn't support that, then you'll want to go below that dose the next day. We'll talk about this in the next steps of day 2, but I'm just putting this here because I do feel like it's an important piece to note. I've had clients, and I personally like that 60 minutes where I feel the medicine that I'll block off in my day of my dosing, where it's sacred time for me to step into creativity, feeling more emotional, I'll meditate, etc. But not everyone likes that, so you get to determine what your actual microdose is, and if that's not what you like, then we won't take a dose that's going to elicit that. And again, if you didn't notice any changes at this dose, if it still feels pretty normal for you, then you're gonna rinse and repeat steps 5 and 6, where you'll take another dose and notice for 60 minutes, pay attention to how you feel until you finally feel the effects of the medicine kick in. Then you'll stop, and you'll really want to pay attention to how long those effects take to wear off, simply for your own records as you move forward with your microdosing protocol. Now you get to move on to day 2, where you test what you learned from day 1 and go just below that threshold dose to find your ideal microdose. And again, just like we did the first day, step 1 is to tune back into that ritual and that welcome intention, and to really set yourself up for how you intend to continue in this microdosing protocol. Again, we are rewiring, so it's gonna take multiple reps before this feels like second nature to you, but the idea is that you're building this new neural pathway of taking a dose with intention. So tune into that welcoming ritual, and then move on to step 2, where you'll take your second dose. Step 2 is to take your dose just below the threshold dose that you found yesterday. So for example, yesterday, if you were at 200 milligrams of psilocybin and you felt that was your threshold dose where you stopped, today you're gonna take 100 milligrams of psilocybin and simply notice. We did this yesterday, so you might have very similar effects as yesterday, but I simply want you to pay attention to how you feel and what thoughts are coming up so that you know what the microdose is going to feel like as you move forward. Now, if yesterday you got to a pretty high dose, let's say you got to 400 milligrams of psilocybin before you started to notice anything, and today you take 300, there might be some changes that happen there. So yesterday, 400 was spread out over 4 hours, right? 60-minute timers between each dose. Once you take a 300 milligram dose at one single time, you might notice that it's a lot more intense. And if that happens, you'll stop completely, pay attention again to how you feel just for your own records. And then tomorrow or whatever day you have next available, you'll take again below that dose. So this day you'll take 200 milligrams and then notice how you feel. This can happen sometimes, but I just want you to be clear that that won't be your dose just because the threshold dose was 400 or whatever it was. You want to get to the place where you don't feel the effects. If you didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, then congratulations, you've found your microdose and you're ready to start your protocol. Now, there are 2 protocols that I typically work with that I find the most effective and have the most structure for optimal change. It's the Fadiman protocol and the Stamets protocol. The Fadiman protocol is a 1-day on, 2-day off protocol. So you take a dose on one day, you take 2 days off for integration, and then you take another dose on the 4th day, and you repeat this process for the entirety of the protocol. The Stamets is a 4-day on, 3-day off protocol. So 4 days of dosing, 3 days off, and then repeat again for the remainder of the protocol. I would suggest being in a protocol for at least 60 to 90 days with about a 1 to 2 week break in the middle of the protocol, because we want to pay attention to the chemical toxicity that's happening in the brain, and we don't want to become dependent on these medicines. The idea is to integrate. right? It's to integrate changes over the dose, over the course of the protocol, so that the brain sustains those changes once you're no longer taking the medicine. Remember, these medicines are tools and they're allies and they're here to support us, but they are not the reason why we're creating change. If you're interested in learning more about protocols, I have a blog post on my website that goes over how much and how often to microdose. And then additionally, I have a video on my channel that goes over this exact thing, which will be linked at the end of this video and down below. As a recap, calibrating your microdose is so important. You want to make sure that you feel like this process is going to support you. If you're taking too much, it's not a microdose and the process doesn't work the same. If you're taking too little, you'll probably be wondering the entire time if this is working for you. Finding that sweet spot and feeling confident about it really changes the experience that you're gonna have. Also, it takes into consideration that some people are simply just more sensitive or need more than others. We don't want to go with the standard because the standard doesn't work for us, and that's not the point. And last but not least, just because I feel like I have to say this, microdosing is meant to be subperceptual. You're not meant to notice the hallucinogenic and psychedelic effects as you're microdosing, which is why microdosing is a practice. We have to practice noticing the subtle changes, the awareness, the emotions, whatever comes up as we're microdosing, so that we can integrate it into our lives and create sustainable change. It's not meant to be like it's not meant to be even a fraction of a macrodose journey. They're completely separate experiences. If you want more guidance or have any questions or curiosities about what we talked about today, you can book a free session with me using the link below. I also have a free microdosing guide for transformation that walks you through this entire process, how to check in, how to integrate so you can get the most out of a microdosing protocol. You can also find that link below. And listen, I'm highly aware that this video at any point could get taken down because we're talking about illegal substances. So if that happens, I want to invite you to stay connected. Subscribe to my bi-weekly newsletter called The Art of Change, where I share stories about my experience, my clients' experiences, and lots of educational resources just like on this channel so that you can stay informed about microdosing, because as you know, I am a firm believer that microdosing can be such a powerful tool to help create change. And if you found this helpful, go ahead and thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and maybe share this with someone who you know is microdosing curious to give them a little nudge in the right direction. I think a lot of times people find this work through trusted resources and friends, so keep spreading the network and keep sharing the love. Happy calibrating, and I'll see you on the next one.